I think most people know Brooks and Scarpa, Angie and Larry. Have been practicing in Los Angeles for,
Since '88.
yeah, and originally they were Pew and Scarpa, and then I guess 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more, um, they sort of reorganized, became Brooks and Scarpa. But they've been doing really interesting work, residential work, larger work, museums. Um, and their work has always been very much tied to place. It's mostly been Los Angeles, but now they're branching out and they're doing projects in North Carolina. And the work has also always been very much concerned with sustainability. Even before the term sustainability was being thrown about, their work always worked with the environment, worked with the climate. It's something that I think Southern California architects have always done. The good ones have always done it naturally. Because I think one of the great attractions of living in Los Angeles has been feeling that connection to the outdoors and creating buildings that work with that have been a part of the modern movement for 75, 80 years. And I think Larry and Angie um, certainly are carrying on that wonderful tradition of modern architecture that works beautifully with the environment. Um, I thought maybe we could just ask you what you're working on right now that you're most excited about that nobody has seen yet.
Well, we have a project that's under construction now in Monterrey, Mexico. It's about a 55,000 square foot uh, office research lab. It's for a automotive manufacturer. They manufacture the Corvette chassis and most of the truck chassis for every major um, automaker. But this is a small project for them, but it's the government of Mexico has started their version of Silicon Valley, but for manufacturing technology, and we're doing their sort of marquee building.
And this is a ground up building or a renovation of an
Ground
older
up.
building?
And it's gone fast and furious, and working. It was our first project outside of the U.S., and you never know what to expect. And when we started getting construction photos, I noticed they started at the back end of the building, the sort of warehouse part, and they made some changes, and I started to get started to write it off, and then I got a set of photos of the part, and they're building it exactly the way we designed it, down to the poured concrete reception desk. So, and we're doing some work in China too now.
And in Mexico, you don't do a full set of drawings. So what we did was what they called 100% complete design development drawings. So, you leave out a lot of detailing, and you expect them to kind of pick it up where you left off. And a lot of times it's hit or miss whether that's going to happen or not. So,
Did you have any control over the contractor? Selecting
No,
the contractor?
but the project manager who actually managed the construction was spent a lot of time in the U.S., and I got along really well with him and had a good feeling, and he's really sort of carried the torch and tried to make it. He's doing a really good job, so we're lucky.
and they've also hired on the consultant who's doing the sustainability part of it for them through construction. So they really, LEED Platinum was their sort of goal, and that's what they want to reach. And so they've hired that person to continue on, which is good.
It's supposed to be the first LEED Platinum building in Mexico. We'll see.
Is it more difficult to do a LEED Platinum building in Mexico than it would be in Los Angeles?
To a certain extent, because they don't have the knowledge there with local people. So there's only one person we found in that part of Mexico that even knows how to commission the building. So we brought in some people from Texas. We have our own people from California, and their codes are a whole lot different. So things are a lot easier to do. And this is a international company, so they wanted to do things right, and like via accessibility. But then when it didn't work for them, they go, oh, don't worry about it. So
So what are some of the key strategies, sustainable strategies that you're using in that building?
the same as we always do. We try to first make the building passively work. It's like old school. As if no mechanical systems existed. And then we have, on top of that, then we have a pretty innovative heating and cooling system. We've actually tapped into the municipal water supply. We've been allowed to tap into the main line with a loop. So, we take a little bit off of the main line, put it through a heat exchanger, and that provides all the heating and cooling for the entire building.
That's great. So what are you doing in China?
We're just starting a housing development. So it's, for us, a big project, for them, a miniature project.
When you say housing, do you mean single-family houses or mid-rise, high-rise?
There are 4 prototype houses that will have a bunch of variations, and they are single family, but there are about 4 stories each unit. So it's kind of a fun little exercise.
And are they stick construction, wood frame?
All concrete. The one thing we're finding too about working outside of the country, no one ever asks about budgets.
Huh.
It's like you do whatever you want. That's like the one good thing. I mean, they build the entire thing out of concrete. I'm like, this is amazing. I've always wanted to do a concrete building. I always have to fight for parts of it.
So where in China is that?
I don't. Where it's in.
We signed the contract last week, so
Oh, okay.
I don't know too much about it.
Yeah. I don't know the name of the town actually, but it's a massive development, with high rises and other things too.
And this will be one component of a much larger, giant
Correct.
project.
Yeah.
And how did the developer find you?
Well, they have everyone we've talked to them for about 3 years, and let's see, Tom Main's working there, Pre-Doc, pretty much everyone in LA except for us,
Okay.
and now we're finally working there.
Is this Vanka?
No.
No. Because Vanka
No.
is one of the biggest developers in China.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, it's not
Okay.
them.
I mean, it's probably too early, but, I guess you're working on the project in Mexico. Is making Brooks and Scarpa a more global firm? Is that part of your strategy?
We don't really. Well, you want to answer that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it's an intentional strategy, but I think over the last 10 years it's sort of happened that way. There's less in California for us to do because private developers have sort of disappeared off the face of the earth. And the type of work that we want to do in the future is more city buildings, I think, and we're getting those projects in other cities.
Yeah,
So it's just a natural evolution, I think.
Yeah, we're working pretty much around the United States now. We're working on a GSA project in Nogales. It's a pedestrian border crossing. We're doing another federal project in Florida. So we're working everywhere that California architects are allowed to work, which means everywhere except for the Northeast.
We're afraid of you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
So what is it like working with the GSA and the federal government?
We really enjoy it. By and large, what I found is as long as you meet budgets and schedules, they leave you alone. And the beauty is they're experienced builders, and they know the process and they know what to expect, and so they really understand it, and they're very easy to work with.
And I think they respect good design and want good design as well, and that obviously is a big part of it.
Now, you've been doing sustainable design since the very beginning. How has your approach to it changed? I mean, when you started doing it, there wasn't even really a term for it. It was just good design. Is your approach to it different now? Are there either technologies that you're able to use or strategies or approaches that either weren't available to you or you weren't quite aware of back then?
When we started, there was no one that could actually do it. We were hired by other architects as the sustainability consultant for other architects. Now, there are people that do it way better than we do. We can't do it nearly as well as some of the people. We don't know nearly as much as they do. So we've gone from kind of the very top to the very bottom in a short period of time. But that doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing. We understand the principles, and it's become a very sophisticated technology. And I like to say you can do anything, but you have to decide what you're going to do. And deciding what you do is a lot bigger decision than actually executing it. So we possess the knowledge to decide what direction we go.
And I also think, we both went to school at the University of Florida, where I took classes in regionalism and learned about building with climates depending on where you're building. And I think it was just something that our profession sort of lost and we're sort of gaining again. And to me, it's just smart building. And I don't like going around talking about sustainability in and of itself. I just think it's something that we need to do, and it needs to be a part of design, and everybody needs to be doing it. And I also think that it should be mandated at a certain level, and so I think codes are changing as well. And if it's mandated, then we won't always have to fight for, it's going to cost more if you do that, and, it just needs to be there.
That's our project in Mexico there, which is now well in construction.
And when will that be done?
I
Probably
think in
4
about,
months.
Yeah, about 4 months.
Is it tilt-up construction?
No, it's all metal. It's a steel frame building. There's the office interior. So those are all north-facing clear stories. And the west is to your left. And so that's really the front of their building. It faces west, not a great thing. But we use this kind of scrim that sits off of the building that lets dappled light kind of go into the building. That's kind of facing west and the front of the building.
The design in the perforations is actually a circle with a couple lines through it that comes from their logo. So Metalza has the logo that's been kind of repeated through the...
They kept asking us forever. They wanted their logo in the building. And so we did this abstract of they have the circle with these. It's not a very pretty logo, so we kind of abstracted it, and then when I saw the construction photos, it didn't look the same. And, so I asked the construction manager. He says, oh, yeah, they're changing their logo, so they took out some of the lines in your design. So it's like after, a year of them hammering us, then, overnight it's changed.
They should have hired you as their graphic designers as
Exactly.
well. Would have made everything a lot easier and probably cheaper for them as well. So maybe that's another way of branching out. But when you work in other countries, how do you make sure that your design not only works with a particular environment there, but the cultural setting as well? How do you make sure that this is a building that not only works with the particular environmental climactic situation, but how does it fit into Mexican culture?
Well, in the case of that project, we went down there. We obviously spent time with the client, and it's amazing what you can learn from Google Earth. And you can know so much. Like I've done this before, where we're working on a project in Hawaii, and we were going to get a surprise visit from the client before we actually visited the site. And so we had downloaded photos, and they sent photos, and we looked at the climate zones, and there's a lot of information you can get. And so we did a little quick charrette to show them some ideas. And then when we went there about a month later, almost every assumption that we made was correct. We were off a little bit by views and view corridors, but all the assumptions were pretty correct. So, with the not has communications improved, but your ability to disseminate or collect information has also changed. I personally think changed the the must of visiting a site before you can design it. And I remember when I worked for Paul Rudolph, we worked on a competition, and we did the whole competition without anyone visiting the site, and it was a big project in North Carolina. And Rudolph, of course, designed everything, and he designed it with the site plan actually upside down.
Okay.
So, like in the last 2 weeks, we had to change everything, the right way.
But don't you have to hang out in Hawaii for at least 6 weeks before you can really start working on it? Hanging out on the beach and absorbing the vibe.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, and our
And the client needs to pay for that.
he thought we should do that too, but not on his dime.
You changed your firm a lot a few years ago. One of your partners left, and two of you sort of reorganized. How did you do that, and how is the firm different now than it was when Pew was with you?
Well, it's sort of funny because we don't think of it as a reorganization at all. We just think of it sort of as a natural evolution. And actually, Gwen and Larry were together for about 12 years before I joined the two of them. And it was sort of a natural evolution for me to join the two of them at the time as well, because my background is really, I worked for a nonprofit private housing developer. I was doing multifamily affordable housing at the time, and they were doing one of their first projects in housing. So
Bathroom additions we were doing.
they were doing a lot of really cool work as well. And so when our son was born, which was 12 years ago, that's when we decided to work together. And then I think at the time, Gwen slowly started doing what he wanted to do, which was different than where we wanted to go with the firm. So for us, there's really no change. We changed the location of our office and we changed the name, but other than that, we're still doing what we've always been doing.
The other thing, I grew up in a family restaurant business, and I watched my parents, try to murder each other. So I was always very aware of working with my spouse, and that was something I vowed I would never do. And, when I started my practice, we were obviously a small firm, so as we had spots of getting busy, we didn't hire new people. We just called Angie in to come work at night, and so over the first 12 years that she wasn't with our firm, she worked there a lot, but it was really by choice.
We would do competitions together. We worked on our house together. Things that were fun for us to do together.
Right. And then, when our son was born, we were like, why aren't we working together? Just we get along, and I know there are other people who do that too, and other people who look at me and go, never, so it's worked well.
So how do you make sure that you don't make the same mistake that your parents did?
We have a lot in common, but we also have some differences. I guess if you put it in really broad strokes, I'm sort of the eternal optimist, and Angie's like the realist, and I say, I try to do things new all the time, and she says, can't we just do something the same twice? So it's
and he's not as stubborn as his father.
Right.
And we don't have a restaurant either.
Right.
But I think to answer your question, it's surrounding yourself with good people also, and I think we have a lot of people who work with us, who we collaborate with, and we have other people who don't work with us that we collaborate with as well. So it's not really just the two of us all the time.
But I would think that it also is a great opportunity for you when you started Brooks and Scarpa to rethink some things. That it's a way of recharging your batteries, looking at the direction, and maybe figuring out what you really want to be doing and what you might not want to be doing. Did you take advantage of that?
To some degree, but I think our firm, or how we practice, we're I would say, more opportunists. You know, if someone comes to us and says, you know, we have this high rise that we need you to do, we're high rise architects. You know, if they say we have a housing project, we're housing people. So, you know, I think it's more not the project types, but the process. And I think how we do work, we were starting to, you know, in our previous incarnation, starting to, I guess, move away, become a more traditional firm where in the early days we did a heavy amount of building, like a laboratory. We tested things in our shop. We made things not to build them as part of the building, but to show our intentions of what we wanted to do. And we've returned to a lot of that. Our shop and our old office became a big storeroom that every time we went to make something, we had to move boxes out. And now we have about a 2,000 square foot shop. So, and we have space outside, so we're building things outside, and we've kind of returned to a glorified cabinet shop, which is kind of what we were to begin with.
Have you turned down certain projects, and why?
Yeah, I would say we do turn some down, and it's mainly, you know, you get, I think you get hardened by your experience. You know, sometimes it's life's too short to work, to have misery on a project, and so you can kind of tell the client, not the project type, and that's mainly it. It's changed for us a lot too. Clients come to us mostly knowing what they're getting themselves into, where before we were always we'd finish a project and our clients were surprised that that's what they got, you know.
Well, we have a few more minutes, so why don't we take some questions from the audience? Anybody out there?
Anybody have a question? Here we go. Give me this microphone.
You guys say that you guys change if a home project approaches you, then you're home builders, or there's some kind of like that, I guess. How do you guys adapt, or what are your processes of changing, like your thought process going into the actual how do I'm trying to vocalize my thoughts, but
Well, let me see if I can help you here. Part of, I think, what we try to do as a firm is I've always vowed to never plagiarize myself, and I guess it's more of a fear. You know, you find something that works and you just kind of stick with it, and you can repeat it over and over and over. So to be fresh constantly requires, you know, you have to put yourself at risk in some way. And so we're kind of, I guess, not afraid to take some risks. And I guess the risks can come in many forms, you know, from aesthetic risks to project type risks, to financial risks, you know, all of those. So, and I remember an artist once telling me that he was a pretty well-known artist, and he did a show and he did a certain kind of work, and when they had the gallery opening, they were all expecting that kind of work, and he did something totally unexpected for him, and the gallery owner invited all these buyers, and all those buyers were there to buy the work that they knew he did. So it was like a big disappointment, you know, for the people there, because it was something totally different. So it's something that kind of is self-perpetuating, and it's hard to be fresh, you know, all the time, and we strive to do that. I mean, I think we start to plagiarize ourselves too sometimes, but we make a conscious effort as a process to try not to do that.
But we do want to work at all different scales because for us it's more the process of design. It's not necessarily, it doesn't really necessarily matter what type of building it is. And in the past, we always had the problem where people would come to us and say, well, you've never done one of those before, so we can't hire you to do that. And it was more that we had to convince people that we could do it. And I think we finally feel that we're at the point where we don't need to convince people that we can do it. It's more what we want to do. But I don't remember turning down any projects in the recent past either. So I know Larry just said that, but we would probably take anything. If any of you need a house done, you know, we'd probably do that.
I think everyone out there would say the same.
There you go.
Angie, how do you manage as the projects get bigger? How do you manage Larry's tendency to want to do something new each time? You know, how does that part work in your relationship?
Well, I think we don't really do something new every single time. I mean, I just said that. I don't think we really do that. And I think what's great
Yeah,
about...
I've got her trained.
You know, it's really innovation and taking risk. And I go around telling people that we should be taking a little bit of risk because I think architects in general are risk averse. And we all have lawyers and, you know, I mean, the lawyers are now writing zoning codes and, you know, there are too many lawyers around. So I do think we need to take more risk. So I think we manage it really well. And, you know, part of it is just the really stupid part of job costing and following your jobs and knowing where the money's going. But if you have that down, then you don't need to worry about it anymore. And then you can really innovate when you know what you're doing and what you want to spend money on. So some projects haven't made any money for us, you know, because we knew what type of project they were and what we wanted to do with it. So.
Well, we call it calculated risk taking. It's not like we're wild cowboys just throwing caution to the wind. It's really, you know, we plan the you know what we expect the approximate end result to be. It's maybe not for certain, but the other thing that we've done, which I think has been successful on our part and maybe, you know, an unintentional consequence, is we bring our clients along with it and we make them part of that risk, and we're very open about what we're trying to do and say, you know, is this where you want us to go? Is this what we should be doing? And so it's a mutual thing. It's not a surprise to our clients when we do that.
And a lot of it is this on? A lot of it's collaboration, I think. A lot of it's collaboration. You know, who's going to build it for you? Does he know what the material is? And, you know, we're really good at figuring all of that stuff out. And, you know, for instance, the aluminum can blocks that we used on that one affordable housing project, you know, we had a client who had a budget, a timeline, you know, and it went out to bid to 4 different people with that in the project. You know, how do you manage that and how do you get that done? So you figure it out.
Thanks, Larry, Angie. Really appreciate it. You guys are doing great work. I want to see the project in China, and definitely keep us abreast of what's happening out there. Thank you.